All right, out there. So, social media has struck again. People out there spreading some complete falsehood about the 5%. You know, we got a lot of people that they do that deliberately. They spread misinformation, deliberately. And at the very least, we know that confuses people that's seeking knowledge. And that's definitely not what we're trying to do. So today I wrote them down. I wrote these down, right? Uh, Five of the biggest lies that I could think of that people tell about the 5%. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna see if we can combat that with some actual fact. You know, this should be good to, for anybody that's interested in the 5% nation. You know, because we definitely don't want the misinformation to win. So Jigga 1017, what's going on out there? Before we get into it, right? Before we get into this countdown, of five of the biggest lies. I guess it's not really a countdown. It's not in no particular order. But what's the deal? What's going on out there? Jigga 1017. Divine education. What is the deal? Yeah, we just waiting for a couple more people to come in before we hit this. Before we hit this five of the biggest lies that I've heard. I'm sure if I thought about it for longer, I could think of another five. We ain't got no shortage of that. Bobby Joe Billy. What's the deal? L7. So look, I got uh I got something here, right, that I ran across this. I'm not even exactly sure. Oh yeah, somebody sent me this. Right? Thus far, to tell the truth, no, it's a little bit has some hurdles, but we locate the hurdles because we don't just plan to get over the hurdles. We also plan to win the race. So there's that part. But at any rate, yeah, somebody sent me this right here, and it just goes to show you, like, see, this is not something, right, for us to attack that person, right? You know, this person, I don't know what they reasoning is, right? But I do know that they're spreading a high amount of misinformation. Right? So this is just the kind of stuff that we gotta outpopulate. We gotta overpopulate this. You know what I'm saying? You know. But check this out though, yeah. This is it was quite a bit. Uh, I don't even know what the word is. I really was kind of speechless when I heard this. Hold on, let me make sure my volume is up so I can hear it right now. Right. So, first of all, right before he even starts talking, right, to any of our NOI brothers, right, that might be listening to this, You know, we don't even know this brother right here, right? You know, we don't know. You know, he's about to make some wild accusations, right, against everybody. You know, the only thing I can tell you is that everything you hear right here, he's speaking for himself. You know what I'm saying? But let's let him cook.
If this hurts your feelings, so be it. Because this will do with NY too when they kill Father Law.
All right, let's stop. Let's stop already. Right? Let's already stop. You know, as I said, right? I have no idea why he's making the statements. Right? Uh, you know, my point of view and the point of view of the people that I know is that look, anybody who claims that they know who did that, they have to be down. They have to be a part of it. Anybody, because this brother, he said he's younger than me, and I wasn't even physically on the planet when that happened. I wasn't even physically on the planet when that happened. So, you know, me and him don't know nothing. That's, if I don't know, he don't know. But at any rate, let's let him continue because you're gonna hear some super craziness.
I'm gonna speak my damn truth, and I don't care what anybody got something to say. And I don't like y'all NY people anyway, because I keep lying damn too much. Father Law was born on February 22nd, in 1928, but he died in 1969, right? And if you do the math
Let's bring this back.
correctly, Father Law got shot one time in 1965. Right, in 1965, he got shot just the day of
Let's
Malcolm X got
see it.
assassinated. Right,
This
so when Malcolm
this stuff that he's saying. This
X
stuff
left
that
NY, and NY killed Malcolm.
whoa. See, that's who knows where he's getting at. But he hasn't. Look, I mean, that's already crazy. See, that's already crazy. Just making a statement like that. Making a statement like that. Uh, that's already crazy. But oddly enough, he has more. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't know if anybody on here knows this brother, right? But his name is Scroll Cipher Allah. That's supposed to be his righteousness. Yeah. He got his, but we're not trying to dox him. I'm just saying that I don't know what kind of name that is. Like when he says scroll, do he mean like scroll like you scroll down the screen? Like when you reading something on the internet and you scroll, or do he mean uh like a scroll, like a ancient, people write in ancient times, and they write on scrolls. I don't know which one he meant. But let's let's uh let's let's see let's see if uh if this is flowing now, and uh you know, this is crazy.
Called the 5%. The Paul Rice teaches, known as the nation gods of earth. So therefore, during his time in Harlem, he was teaching science of supreme mathematics and supreme alphabets. He was, how you call it, teaching children violence is not always the answer, but moving righteous is the answer. Somewhere down the line, somebody didn't like him and shot him. You see? Planet 13X was shot and killed in June 1969. His killer is still unknown. So his killer is still out there. And if you link things together, when you look at a universal flag, the seven of the Moorish temple, the nation has not got, moon and stars, that should tell you a whole lot of sense, don't you think? Because they didn't kill no Bourgeois Ali and they didn't kill Elijah Muhammad, but yet when they talk about evil things about the white man, the NOI, nobody get killed in NOI. But yeah, we got the righteous lead like Malcolm X and Father Law. Oh yeah, it's a whole different mess now. That common sense. Show, and I keep telling brothers out here, show and prove that Father Law was teaching the 120 lesson. And what videos can y'all prove it? Because if you can't prove it, y'all need to shut the fuck up. Excuse me. Y'all need to shut the fuck up about the Father Law. Because some of y'all fucking people with for NY came to the nation gods of earth. And that's 100% facts. If you could prove to me, show and prove through evidence that Father Law was teaching the 120 lesson, I give it to y'all. Hands down. But if you cannot show and prove this, that means somewhere down the line, someone's playing with the nation gods of earth with the NOI teachings. Don't you think so?
So that was that was scroll cipher right there. I don't know. Does anybody know scroll cipher? Is anybody out there familiar with this, brother? Well, maybe you could help them out. Because I've never look. That's the first time. I mean, look. If it was to somehow be revealed, right, that 120 lessons, right, we was never supposed to learn that. Uh, I can't like how where do we classify that? Well, the right there, you couldn't really see that right there, but he got that off of Wikipedia. Sharing love from the neighborhood. Missed this by that much. But it's just another example of social media striking again. And for him, I mean, to a certain degree, it seems like he need help. You know what I'm saying? But people that need help can still be dangerous. You know what I'm saying? But look, let's get into this right here, right? uh, line number one, right? The 5% nation worships the Father of Law as God. Uh, that's a big one. Has anybody has anybody seen that? That we worship the Father of Law, right, and hang on His every word. You know what I'm saying? And here's the thing: when it says that we don't believe in nothing, right? We don't believe in things that's invisible. We know that it's things that can't be detected by the naked eye. But there's no you don't say a prayer to Allah. There's nothing there's nothing that and I just say Allah. I said Father Allah so people could know who I'm talking about, but I just say Allah, right? What I'm saying is that because that's His name, you know, you can't say a prayer like He's not coming back to do nothing for us and nothing like that. And this is one of the things too where a lot of times you hear you know different groups being spoken about like cults, right? uh we don't have a central figure that's controlling us like that. What we do have is a set of principles. You know what I mean? And like with any set of principles, uh, you know, it comes a point where you're not upholding enough of those principles, right, to be considered that thing that is identified by those principles. See, like you could have a car, but see, once you start taking it apart, it comes a certain point where it's not a car no more. It's a frame or whatever's left there. So we do have that. Those are principles that we use to guide, but we don't have a person. You know, there's always a best knower amongst us in the various environments that we go in, meaning that it might not be the same person. One person might be the best knower of, uh, electricity, and another person may be the best knower of plumbing. Another person may be the best knower of carpentry, etc., etc. But they come together, right, and you know, add on to one thing. That's what we deal with. We're not, uh, we didn't trade in one deity for another deity. You know what I'm saying? We don't worship anything. We don't worship anything. Because we have that being said, but I don't know how you worship the thing that you are. Maybe it's me. I call it loving myself. I love myself, but in terms of worshiping yourself, I'm not sure. Because it's that's what we hear and we learn. We learn that the black man is God, right? Meaning, any one of us with the proper and supreme knowledge of self that puts that in the activation, right? Then you're upholding those principles. He said, I've had Moors ask if we call him Allah, then we must worship him. Amongst the Sunnis is shirk, amongst the NOI, I'm a hypocrite, and the MF Mustafa Muhammad is the only Allah worthy of worship in this day and time. I mean, all I can say is they don't have clearly those uh, brothers that you encountered, right? They never been exposed to what we deal with is a large arm, leg, on head. Maybe they haven't also been exposed to the fact that you know all of our name is Allah. maybe maybe they're not aware of that. That we call each other Allah. You know we had to be specific, right? Because if it's more than two of us there, right, I could be talking to both of them. But it's definitely not uncommon amongst us, right, to hear us referring to each other as Allah. But you can't be the maker, the owner, the cream of planet Earth, right? Father civilization and God of the universe, and be worshiping. Kind of like being dry and being wet at the same time. So, stuff like this, you just gotta watch, right? Because see, like you just see right there, it's like, people, because see, people, uh, a lot of times their mind can only conceive things that have already been exposed to. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things like, see, uh, it's certain things, it's certain animals that in other places they eat them, right? And we don't eat them. And then there's certain animals here that we eat, and then someplace else they don't eat them. You know what I'm saying? Like I seen these people that I can't say that they worship rats, but the rats were some kind of religious figures, where they put all this crumbs out and everything for the rats to just come and roll all through. And a white rat, was a little, that was some type of good fortune or something. You see what I'm saying? So it's people that if they came from, say, India here, right, and they saw us, they saw like a cattle farm or something, right? Certain, I'm not all of them, but I'm saying amongst them, there's ones that revere cows. You know what I'm saying? Or look, other places, you know, they look at man's best friend as food. That would just be horrific. You you going to jail for a long time. Look, how much time how much time they gave Michael Vick? You get at least 5 times that. You might get life on the back of that, in America. But just saying that, that's if you this is what this thing adds. So every time you see it, right, that's the way you respond to the idea that you already have of that thing, right? So what I'm saying, all that to say, is some people, they already have their idea of who and what Allah is. So to them, that's, like, how could you, they can't, uh, really conceive of how we seeing it. See, that's what you got to be aware of. That a lot of these other, you know, they are brothers. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to, say they outsiders or whatever, but just saying that, a lot of other people is talking about little G. Like, yeah, they saying the black man is God with us and all that, right? But they mean little G. And so that's why you got to be aware of that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So, you ready here? Let's go. Line number 2. The 5% nation teaches racism against white people, right? You know, so of course, we don't sugarcoat it. We don't sugarcoat it over here, right? We teach that the black man is God and the white man is the devil. You know what I'm saying? But we teach that righteousness and unrighteousness is choices. You know what I'm saying? That whether you black or you white or half original, whatever it is, right? Every second of the day, you got the choice whether to be a positive or a negative to yourself and everybody that's around you. New Black World Order, the the the, the mathematician, Medina was the deal. So uh, a lot of people, right? They might be shocked to know that yeah, we got quite a few white 5%. We got 5% in every uh, well, not Antarctica, but it's 5% in Europe, 5% in the Far East, 5% in South America, Mexico. You know what I'm saying? We here to teach all the human families. That's what we teach, right? And the 5%, right? We have, uh, you know, we're not going to get this. We keeping this one right here simple, right? This is a kind of an intro, right here, right, to some of what the 5% teach. But we teach that the devil is made by separation. So being that we ain't trying to make the devil, right, then uh, our job is to unify. You know what I'm saying? All of those that want to be pro-righteous and anti-establishment, right? We unify them. You know, no matter what your description is. See, we don't judge, we examine. Meaning people come from all walks of life, all stages of life, et cetera, you know, and you can learn what this is about. And if you decide to internalize it and become this, then you can do that. But if if you're determined to be about establishment, I mean, we're going to be like the other billions of people in the world and not want to be around you and not want you around us. That's, it's not uh, complicated. It's not complicated on that front right there. You know what I'm saying? But we don't teach hate. We teach love, peace, and happiness. Whew. So we on number 3 now, right? Or we got any questions? We got any questions out there before we touch down on line number 3 that I've heard on many an occasion, right? About the 5%. So you know what I'm saying about going to war with people. This is just about, straightening it up. For those who may not know, right? You're not going to overcomplicate it. So everybody straight out there? No questions? So line number 3, right? And this is a biggie. This is one that we've come across right here on the channel. This is you know how to like LA Law and all that stuff, Law and Order, where they get a episode right out of the headlines. Like sometimes it'd be like a real recent headline where they'll rush a show. They'll rush and produce a show with that headline so they can get that bread. You know what I'm saying? So this is ripped right from the headlines of the last couple of lives, right? The 5% is just the Nation of Islam Lite. Like Diet Coke. You got like when you get the dressing, like salad dressing, and you got the full flavor and you got the light. So yeah, that's it. There's some people that are having a little bit of trouble understanding, right? That look, we are not NOI members, right? That just didn't want to deal with the restrictive law. We're not NOI members that we didn't want to have discipline. We were never NOI members. Allah was an NOI member, right? Allah went to Korea too. He's a decorated war hero. For those that don't know, right? Now look, when he was in Korea, he took an oath to certain things, right? He took an oath over there to the military. You know what I mean? Just like when he was in the NOI, right? That's a part of his history, right? He wrote a letter to Master Fard Muhammad. That's how you get in the NOI. We never wrote no letter to Master Fard. Like that's not how you get this knowledge. You see, just like the brother was saying a few minutes ago. Look, here's the thing, right? They call Allah, right? They call him by his name that he had during that stage. They call him Clarence 13X. That's over there. See, we never met nobody named Clarence. When he founded the 5%, right? The people who say, we the sons of Allah, right? When he started that, his name was Allah. So we don't really know about that. I don't. Don't get me wrong. I know, he went, but I'm talking about his full day-to-day experience in there. See, over here, like I said, over there, they call him Clarence 13X. Over here, we call him Allah. See, over there, right, they call WF Muhammad Allah. Over here, we call him WF Muhammad. They teach that WF Muhammad is Allah, right? And he's the one. Over here, we teach that there's always one amongst us that can rise to the top in various situations. See, we're not dealing with the time when it could only be one. This is where we're not just talking about we just taking some. No, this is a fundamental shift in the fundamental principles of what we say. That this is not, look, this is, I drew this up, right? Look, it's not that much. A lot of times I don't like to go into the Bible. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to confuse people. But look, maybe I could explain this in this way, right? See, when it was Abraham, it was one person that had the message. It was just one person that had the message. Then he had two sons, but it can only be one. So, you know, in that story in the Bible, he passes it down. He passes the message down to Isaac. And then he has two sons, but it can only be one. So he passes it down to Jacob. But then after Jacob, and you get to the 12 tribes, see, it's one amongst them. Whether it's Joshua, whether it's Elijah, whether it's Moses, whether it's Jesus, it's one that rise up amongst them. That have the clear enough vision to lead the way on whatever it is that need to be done at that time. See, that's how we draw things up. That's why we stay sharp. See, because it's always going to be a time when you're going to have to step up and be that one. Even if it's just with your family, right? You're going to have to step up and be that one. That's what we teach. We don't teach that one person, right? One person, he's the last of his time. Yeah, we witnessed to all of that, right? You know, last prophet, last messenger, last of the message. All right, we got it. Ain't nobody else coming to hold our hand. We got it. So no, this is not Nation of Islam like this is not, you know, being in the Nation of Islam, right, was one of the experiences that Allah had, right, that he used as tools to teach the young brothers that was there at that time, and then it kept going. So there's things all the way from, you know, when he was growing up, when he was very young, he grew up on a farm. And so there's certain things in our dietary law, right, that he learned on the farm. That's our dietary law. It's not from how to eat to live. And it's not that it's against how to eat to live. It's not like, you know, he's disagreeing, but he's giving us his own things that he's learned from experience. Like I said, there's some things that he learned in Korea. that, he used those as tools, to teach the young brothers that was there, that continued, and now that's still a part of our knowledge, that's still a part of our culture, that's still a part of the things that we do. You know what I'm saying? And look, that's not to diminish, right? That yes, uh, 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 W.F. Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, and the NOI, a great amount, right, of the tools that he used, was things that he learned over there. But nah, it's not just, we got the lessons and then like no. We had supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet first, and then in order for us to learn how to use supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet, right? That's where we get 120. We get that so we could practice. We could practice how to draw things up, weigh things and judge things, see what's the positive, see what's the negative, see who's the people we got to eliminate from our cipher, see who's the people we got to add on in our cipher. You see what I'm saying? But this is not an offshoot of 120 lessons. We didn't read the lessons and then made up the rest. That's not the way it went. This is not, we was children. The brothers who was there at that time, they was children. But he was a grown man during the time when this knowledge was being manifested, right? It's, he's between 36 and 41. You know what I mean? So a lot of the juvenile behavior that you saw was from the juveniles, but that was not the teachings of Allah. You know what I'm saying? Which is, you know what? That is for another. We got another point here, right? Another big story that we hear about the gods, right? That we're gonna be addressing. So I'm gonna cut that one off right there, right? You know what I'm saying? But we don't go to Juma. We don't go to the mosque, to the temple, none of that. We have ciphers. Where we build with each other. From day to day, second to second, minute to minute. And we have parliaments and rallies. We're, like I said, people who's the best knower, and whatever's the various sphere of operation, put their best foot forward, and we get things done. So we're on number 4 now, right? The 5% nation has no structure or real teachings. You know, the video that we saw a little while ago, where people think that you just make this up as you go along. See what it is, or one of the things that I see from the outside, right? The 5% is a very basic thing. It's a set of principles. Like the sister is saying right here, right? We don't do Ramadan and things like that. See, because a lot of that is a lot of things that got to do with where people was at the time when at the time in the place where they was living out whatever they was living. See, we right here. This is from Harlem, New York. The 5%. That's where this was first born at. It was in Harlem, New York. So, we got our culture right here that if we have to grow and develop it, right, with our own customs and celebrations, right, then that's what we do, right? Like we have the Sean Pool, we got the laws born day coming up. You know, we develop our own culture. When we fast, we fast in 3 days straight. See the where they fast on Ramadan, that's not fasting fast. Like just where you can eat, where you can eat in the nighttime. And I'm not, it's not wrong. They doing what they're doing. But the way it was born to us, right, is we fast for the 3 days straight, or the 5 days straight, or the 7 days straight, or whatever. You know, this is just other things what you telling. So this is what I'm saying now. So that's something where clearly we got more discipline. See, just like keeping 120 on cap and being, we got more discipline. You know, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's not weight on that other side of the scale too, right? Where there's some things that some of our brothers and sisters, in other groups and other nations, right, have more discipline than us. We have to acknowledge that. If we got to grow and develop in that way, then we got to grow and develop in that way. You know what I'm saying? But ain't no, pearly gates where we're gonna be able to pass through there, and then it's gonna change, right? This is not the science that we believe. You understand what I'm saying? But a lot of people don't understand. See, if you never really come in tune with these teachings, right, then you don't understand that. See, the first part of the structure is the supreme mathematics. See, this is what a lot of times when people, they see us as being kind of standoffish, you know what I mean? Or, we kind of, we like, like I said, we don't judge, but we examine. And when we examine, we don't generally hesitate to let you know what our finding is. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, they see us being like that, but see what it is we already have this basic mathematics where certain things where it's like, all right, you're doing stuff out of order. And if you ever had that happen, right, with a 5% where like you said one or two things and then it was like, all right, and they kind of, that's because see, whenever you spoke, right, you didn't go according to the order of supreme mathematics. Now, look, you may have your own order, and that's do what you do. See, because that's a part of our teachings too, right? Is that you gotta do what's best for you. You gotta do what brings about a change, right, in your life for the better. See, if you get involved with this and your life go down, you shouldn't have got involved with this. It's not for you. But a lot of times, like I'm saying, people don't understand that that's the beginning of the structure, right? And then the next part of the structure, you're not going to discover unless you're a builder. You see what I'm saying? It's just like uh, right now, like how you got politicians, right? Wherever you from, you got politicians in your state, you got politicians in your town, your city, whatever, right? You know, if you don't go and find out, you know what I'm saying, if you're not politically minded, you know what I'm saying, you're not involving yourself with politics, you're not going to know who those people that is a part of the structure is. So it's the same way, right? Okay, you come to the rally, maybe, you know what I'm saying? And when you come to the rally, it's like you don't understand it. Look, that's it, that a lot of people that happens is that they think that there's no structure, right? And then they try to do something, and then the structure stops them. And they're always surprised why, and they always want to know, well, why did the structure stop us? Because you disrespected the structure. The same way you can't just walk into Congress right now, right? You can't walk into City Hall. You can't walk in the Supreme Court and just start talking about whatever you want to talk about, you know, or, you know, trying to bring about changes that is actually steps that you got to go through if you want to change that. Because this is not you and your children. This is all other grown people, gods and earth. Grown people, grown men and women. See, these is different things. See, not everybody, some people can lead children, but they can't lead women. You see what I'm saying? And only a few people can lead men, grown men. You know, when you can lead people that know what to do. But these are the things that people don't understand because, you know, they've never been amongst us, right? Where you seen the structure work. Speaking of the structure, uh, I was at the Parliament on Sunday, and we got some good news about the progress on the development at the school. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about on the whole property, you know, getting to the point where something is built on that whole footprint. Uh, some very strong steps forward was made on that. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, if you don't come to the parliament, if you're not in tune with certain people or whatever, you would never know, right, that there's people that's working already, you know, to the point, you know, they already dialoguing with the city. You know what I'm saying? This is an example I'm kind of giving here of how now somebody comes up and you're trying to impose your plan that you came up with by yourself when the structure has already agreed that this is the way we going, right? And these is the brothers right here that we've all agreed is qualified to handle that. And no one's agreed with you. See, you know, the idea that this knowledge is kind of willy nilly. It's like when you see 5% and you say, man, look, you know, y'all all, yeah, that's because we all learn from it. Just like everybody, you know their times tables, right? Everybody's supposed to know their times tables up to 12 times 12. Was that pretty customary amongst uh you know everybody on the live stream right now? That when you touch like the the first grade, second gradish, somewhere around there, You get the whole chart with the times tables, 12 by 12. So see, we expect certain things. If we ask somebody what's 7 times 8, we expect them to know that's 56. Right? Because we all had that drilled into us when we was young. So see, by that same token, we've all had this knowledge drilled into us when we was young. See, even that right there, that was a structure. The ciphers and all of that, that was structure. Like, when I came outside, right? You hear it from, a lot of times people want to tell their war stories because that's more exciting. See, now I'm gonna make the cipher sound boring. Is that was structured? Like, you know how, like, part of structure is having a routine. You know what I'm saying? So now, every morning, no matter what, comes up for the rest of the day. Let's say I go in the wrong direction, but see, in the morning when I got to school, it's gonna be a cipher there, and we're gonna go through the lessons. And I was in a particular, the ciphers that was around, that structure was real strong. So you was gonna have to go through the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding. So that's one of the ways how it was drilled into me in a way that it wasn't, like, that's how structure is. It's a routine. It's a set of things that you do that now it drills into you, that now that you've been to that routine, you always going to react when you get in those situations. You know what I'm saying? When I go outside, I'm going to react in that way where I'm going to make sure that I know my lessons because I spent some formative years doing that. You know what I'm saying? As you meet in different people, right? You meet this person, and then they take you and introduce you to another brother, right? And then this brother, he takes you to meet a brother, and that brother walk with Allah. But see, you would never know that if you just think that we a set of live streams on the internet, right? Or if it's somebody who's just getting exposed to this knowledge, right? And so you see the people in your school, right? You know what I'm saying? Or you see the people that's in a rap group that you like or something, right? That they all saying this, but you're not seeing that, no, it's a whole structure where they came from. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people, we in various neighborhoods, right? We have times when we come together, but we all moving where we need to move on 196,940,000 square miles, right, of the planet Earth. So let's say, divine education, for instance, right? You just typed in the screen, right? Now, divine education's neighborhood, right? They know him. That's the guy. They get into a dilemma where they like, man, I can't really figure out. Let me go ask the guy, man. Yo, guy, man. Yeah, and I hate those kind of people. I do. Because, see, I give you the knowledge, and then you figure out your own problems. How about that? Like, if you know that this is the solution, why are you waiting for me to do all the work, right? That's blood sucking. I know what 10% is. You ain't for me to do all the work and then you swoop in and get all the solutions, right? I go through all the hell, you get all the right. Nah. We don't do that. But my point is, right, that the people in that neighborhood that they go to divine education, they don't know that in another neighborhood, divine education got a brother that's just like him, equal in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. See, but if like I said, you gotta witness the structure, right? You gotta witness the structure in order to know it exists. You know, you know, there's another way where, the discipline has to be up here. We don't have uh, you know, like fines and stuff like you got other places where you gotta pay a fine and stuff like that. No, we don't have that. You know what I'm saying? Because all of this, we in the universe. We in the universe. So see, if a person is doing something wrong, right? Then when they crash, they crash. You see what I'm saying? When you hear us say that the Asiatic black man is the maker, the owner, the creator of planet Earth, father, civilization, and God of the universe. Okay, if you the maker of that, then you be the owner of that. Whatever is that situation that you cause for yourself. If you had knowledge of yourself and knowledge of the devil and knowledge of 196,940,000 square miles, not the 85%, the best you could be is the 10%. Bullshitting yourself. But that was, I think we spent enough time on that. So this is the one right here that I almost went over into this one. I almost went over into this one right here on the other point, but lie number 5. The 5% Nation is a gang or criminal organization. So this is, I'm not, uh, you know, where do we start with this, right? First of all, let's go back to Allah, right? You know, Allah is family man, you know what I'm saying? Military man, was in the NOI. Allah was not a criminal. There's nothing in the lesson. See, in the lessons, it tells you telling lies, stealing, trying to master, manipulate people, right, is devilish. See, a lot of people, right, when you not a 5%, right, and you haven't met 5% that have risen through the structure, not just risen through the structure like rising in rank, because we don't have ranks, but you rising yourself up in the structure, right? You using that structure, right, as a tool to elevate yourself. See, when you've only met people that say they 5% like that, then you may have never heard, right, that amongst our first rules is everybody got to get a job. Everybody got to get a job, learn a trade, or be in school. See, that's the reality. See, like I said, other groups, you know, they were started by children. See, like I said, the 5%, we're children, but we was taught by a grown man. And so when you have seen, right? We can't deny that, right? That everybody's seen 5%ers, right, that engage in criminal activity. You know what I'm saying? Now, by the way, you've seen Christians and Muslims and Jews and everybody else in it too. But let's not deal with relativism, right? We're not talking, we don't have to talk about them, right? But, sometimes when people are taking shots, you might want to, sometimes you feel the urge to point that out, right? But see, like I said, right, when uh, you get the knowledge, right? I use myself as an example, right? When I get the knowledge, I'm 15. And like I said, Allah is between 36 and 41 when he's teaching the first young brothers, right? So I'm hearing a lot of the things that he teach, right? But what it is that my 15-year-old mind can't really understand everything his 36-year-old mind is communicating. And so that's a seed that he planted with the very first brothers. That's one of the reasons why we keep everything on cap. Because the way he taught it is that, look, you're not going to understand it right now, but keep it on cap and you're going to grow into the understanding where you'll be able to see it. So a lot of things back then, like, yeah, I heard that said, but I didn't know what to do with that knowledge at that time. You know what I'm saying? I'm surrounded by things that I'm just now learning how to navigate. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like this right here where you getting the knowledge on the on the uh, on the internet. I'm not sure where everybody's at. You could be on the phone, you do whatever, but you might be in the safety of your home learning this. You know what I'm saying? But we outside where your head got to be on a swivel as you're learning this. Like that was a part of the structure, right? That look, if we stand in a cipher, right, then everybody can see the persons. You can see who's coming behind the people that's straight across from you, and that was a part of it. Nobody's supposed to just walk up on us. We had to learn, right, to be military minded in that way. Now look, like I said, in time, you start having babies and all that. Yeah, you got to be aware. So that was a part of the training that we was getting. Like I said, these seeds that's planted when we in those ciphers, those is the tools that we end up using, right, to build whatever we have to build in life. You see what I'm saying? But this is not like, see, if you in a group that was started by teenagers, right, you grow out of it. You see what I'm saying? Like you start getting in your high 20s, and these principles of kids, like you really just don't even got time for that. You see what I'm saying? But with the 5%, you have to grow into it. So yeah, you see individuals, right, at various stages of growth and development because we don't have. It's not like the police academy, right? You know what I'm saying, or the military, where like let's say if you're going to sign up, right, or even regular school, it's like the semester start on a certain day, and you could be ready to learn right now, but you got to wait till the semester start. 5% is not like that. When you choose for yourself that you want to be a 5%, then that's when your road to being a 5% starts. So you got people on all various, and then on top of that, right? It's about how much you apply yourself to it, right? You got some people that learn 120 in a couple weeks. You got some people that's struggling decades later. You see what I mean? So like I tell people, look, we all equal as the Asiatic black man. You know, right? But then when we get to the maker and see, I made more than you. I'm the cream on more parts of the planet Earth than you. Not because I was better than you. We both started out as the Asiatic black man. We both started out as the Asiatic black man. But that's what you decided to do with arm, leg, arm, head. Right? And so we see that, these brothers, right, who in their stages of growth and development, right, they took many detours, right, and they paid the price for that. They paid the price for that. Those some of the things that they made for themselves and they own for themselves. You know what I mean? Because it's not, ultimately, uh, we're God. Ultimately, we freedom is one of our principles. So see, a person is free to do whatever they think is just and true, right? And then we just determine our equality with them after that. Like it's certain things you might do that you think is right, right? But I know that that would be detrimental to my life. So you can do what you want to do. I'm just not gonna let you do it around me. And I'm not gonna be around you when you do it. You know what I'm saying? If it comes to the level where what you're doing is such that, listen, I got to, you know, when you done with this mission, right? Then, but in the meantime, you know, these are the decisions that you got to make, right? And these are the things that, listen, you know, the 5%, in this day and time, it's on the internet, but in the past, it was going to people who really needed it to save their lives. And the reason why their lives needed to be saved is because they was already in the grips of the beast. Like they was already all of the ills of society, drugs, crime, lack of education, all of these things, right? This was going on in New York City, right? Where this knowledge was founded at. These are the things that was going on. You know, like I said, I speak for myself. I was already getting in a amount of trouble, you know, physically and mentally. You see what I'm saying? So uh, it's one of those things too, right? Where a lot of times when people have this image, right, of the guys as a gang, what I'm saying is that a lot of them pick off the honor roll. Like if he would have went down to Harlem Prep from the jump, right? If he would have started by going to Harlem Prep and getting all the kids off the honor roll, then it probably would have been a different thing. But see, he got kids that was already in trouble. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about not just, in trouble or whatever. I'm talking about in trouble in life where they may not live on and prosper. You know what I'm saying? So what he's doing is he's getting kids that's coming out of juvenile. Some of these kids some of them is already in gangs, right? And he's getting these kids and he's getting them into art programs. He's getting them back into high school. He's getting them into college. And so, like with any other program, you know what I'm saying? If you picking, you know, you picking from the people that cream still got to rise to the top. But right now, it's at the bottom of the barrel. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why you see, like, let's go back to one of the things that I said earlier, right? With we don't worship a lot, right? But because some of us was in a position where, especially looking back, you like, man, I had a lot going on around me at that age where it's like, yeah, I might not have made it. You know what I'm saying? Or because I was around a good group of people and everything. Even when, I say out of my babies that I had, I might have been missing for some of them. You know what I'm saying? So all of them might not be here. It's who knows what would have happened. All we know is what did happen. And so that's why, you would hear us say things like all praise due. Right? Meaning that we have to give credit where credit is due. We have to recall that history. Right? Who planted that seed, right? So that we keep track of it. Especially, you got, all of that, us keeping everything on cap and everything, that's all a part of, uh, if one of our biggest problems over here, right, is that we were stripped of the knowledge, right? The knowledge of ourselves, our culture, and all of that, but we can't be stripped of it if we got it on cap. But at any rate, you know, uh, this the main thing that Allah was teaching was about education, and he didn't what's the word? He specifically put rules, right, in the nation, left us with certain principles and rules like going to school and all of those types of things, you know what I'm saying? And then just, as the time that he spent with us, right, he wasn't saying that there's no directives. Like I said, there's no place that we go and we have a meeting and we split up the money and none of that. It's like we don't get, there's no big homies, there's no little homies, there's no, of course, you got people that got, uh, some people got more experience with this, some people got less experience with this, right? But the person with the more experience doesn't give the person with the less experience orders. See, when we have to come together for one common cause, then yeah, we do that and we recognize who's the best knower, right? That needs to just let us know what to do, and then we can execute it and make this thing the best it can be. But there's no, uh, I mean, I've been doing this since I was a kid, so I don't even know the elements of the game or whatever. You understand what I'm saying? But whatever those elements are, they missing over here. You know what I'm saying? And what I would say to anybody who might have had some experiences with the guys, right, where they might look at us as a gang, you gotta, you know, you gotta kind of widen your scope, right, and realize that you know there's wherever you sending your kids to school at, it's 5%ers in there. They second generation, third generation, fourth generation. They doctors and bankers. you know, they work at the tech companies. 5%ers. They basketball coaches. You understand what I'm saying? But uh, you know, some people some people had, we have something that we deal with in this nation, right? Where we call taking the devil off our planet, right? We also call it taking 4 devil's heads. And what that means is eliminating the bad characteristics within your own self. You know what I'm saying? And some people, for various reasons, they can't see those negative characteristics until something happens. Something happens where you become affected by that negativity that you did, and then now you might be able to see the perspective now. You know what I'm saying? But in other words, it's like, say if you're doing something wrong every day, right? And you could have been doing it since you was a baby, and nothing don't never happen, so you never knew nothing was wrong with that until one day you see the consequences of it. Now you can learn that, oh, whoa, that was a bad characteristic. I gotta correct that. You see what I'm saying? And so, yeah, various people may have had a a harder time, right, with dealing with those devils than others. But no part of these teachings, right, is about being in the game. No parts of these teachings is about doing crime. This is something where when people go into the city, right, that's a decision that they decide to make. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, this is not a cult. We don't control people. When people go to their neighborhood, they can do all types of things, depending on what kind of person they is. See, that's how I look at it. Like, if you a piece of shit, right, then you gonna tell me that you don't eat pork, but when you go in your neighborhood, you gonna eat pork. But see, that's the type of person you is. And see, eventually, right, eventually, you being a liar like that is going to surface. That's who you are. So that's you know, I guess we covered that. You know what I'm saying? You know, uh, like I said, it's and you know what? It's not up to the people. That last, and really all of these things, to the 5% that's paying attention. right? It's not up to other people to destroy these lives. You know that, right? See, it's a difference between fault and responsibility. That's the difference between the righteous and the unrighteous. See, like right now, right? If you, if let's say you were standing on the street, right? You stand in front of your house, and a lion, I'm talking about a real African lion, right? That be on the Serengeti, comes running down the street, right? Now, unless you're the lion keeper at the circus or the zoo, that's not your fault. You're not the one that left the pen open, right? So the lion can escape. But are you going to look for the person whose fault it is? Or are you going to take the responsibility upon yourself to run inside and not get eaten up by the lion? See, that's the difference between fault and responsibility. See, now multiply that times 7. Right? When you said that you got, and all that above is caused by the Son of Man. Now, right, what's the difference between fault and responsibility? You know, and don't get me wrong. Just because I know whose responsibility it is, don't think that it's going to be taking me out of my way to blame. No. That's right on my way. I ain't got to go out my way, not one iota, in order to let the person that blame to know they had blame. But I ain't gonna wait for that person. Because look, half of the time, if they fucked up, why are you trusting them to fix it? She's like, is it me? Is it me? Or am I bugging with that? Type one in the box if I'm bugging with that, because that's something I never understood. Like, especially if you don't know how you fucked it up. But I digress. So uh, one thing that I'm keen on with this misinformation, right, is that uh, especially right now, a lot of times we've been saying that recently, man. It's like, man, you know, we used to see each other, and it used to be, various celebrations. But now, a lot of time when we come in together now, it's at somebody's memorial, man. You know what I'm saying? Just listen, this whole year, man, we got hit hard. You know, uh, uh, as more of the people who walk with Allah return, you know, I'm talking about historically, right? So let me not just say Allah, right? Let me say, multiple great men, like for instance, in our degrees, right? Where it says that Jesus' teachings was not Christianity. It was freedom, justice, and equality. See, they ain't changed it right then when he was there. They waited till the time passed. And don't get me wrong, we not. I'm talking about in context of the story that's there. We're not discussing whether the Bible is real or not. But I'm saying that in the context, they didn't change it right then. So you can't change it when the people who walk with them is still around. They're gonna say, nah, that ain't happening. And look, anybody that's been around the brothers that walk with a lot, you've heard that multiple times. But see, once it gets to the time, see, if we let this knowledge dwindle, man, see, everything, I'll say everything on here, trust me. I got a whole bunch of knowledge I ain't never gonna say on here. But see, we can't let this knowledge dwindle down to where nobody don't got it. See what I'm saying? We can't let the people that want to deal with misinformation see they try and bloodsuck us. See, notice they want to use all elements of our language and our culture, our flag, everything, our names. So, we got to watch them with that propaganda. I might be paranoid, G, but I'm telling you, this is the time when shit starts happening. See, look, if the people ain't strong, it could fall as soon as that person is gone. But if the people who walk with him is still strong, right? Then now that's another generation of people that they gotta wait out. That's why a lot of people don't like me. Because now I'm another generation that they got to wait out. Just when they thought it was safe to go back in the water. But I digress. You know what I'm saying? Uh, so just like I said, it's not everybody else's responsibility. It's our responsibility, right, to get this truth out there. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, we can respond to them on the internet, but that ain't really. We got to respond in society. See, yeah, you can have where this person did a tweet and they said something bad about you, and then you did a tweet where you said, "Nah, it's not like that." Right? You could do that, right? Or you could go out in the world, right, and really be who you say you is, right? Do some saving, right? And then that's what it is. What I don't know what to put. You don't put extra sauce on that. You went out and did some saving. Say less. You know what I'm saying? What kind of saving? I don't know what maybe it's an alligator over there. You gotta save people from an alligator. You know, maybe they haven't eaten all day. I don't know what the people need. That's why you got there. That's why we all the best. That's what I'm saying. That's why whoever's over there, right? That's Allah, that know who he is, know who the devil is, right? And know that heaven and hell is right here, and you're gonna build it, right? With the things that you do, they got to know what to do over there. If you don't know what to do, now I'm gonna leave that out. We're not even gonna take it there. You know what I'm saying? But that's the how they call it, the call to action right there. It's that you know we got to manifest this thing, right? And it's supposed to be seen and heard everywhere, right? Amongst all the human families. So see, look, if you're new to the channel, you might never heard this one, right? But see, you can't really, you can't sell McDonald's fries. You can't sell fake McDonald's fries. Which I don't eat McDonald's. I haven't eaten in decades, right? But I know that when I did eat it, right, the fries was so distinct that they couldn't slip nothing in. And see, McDonald's is so active. We see if you come out right now with a McDonald's pin on, people gonna ask you if you work at McDonald's now. See, that's what's supposed to happen when a person put that flag on. People supposed to say, "Oh, you supposed to be righteous now?" Yeah, that's what you was doing right there. That wasn't righteous, my man. See, that's what's supposed to happen. That's what's supposed to happen when somebody put that flag on. The world, Craig, the world is supposed to know that that is for the righteous people. And they deal with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But we ran through our little list right there. I don't know if we got any questions. If we got any questions, yeah, I know I missed yesterday. I don't know. I've been battling with insomnia. I don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't even get to rest last night. So I'm gonna wind this one down. If we ain't got no last questions, you know, um, I got a couple more topics like this. A couple more topics we gonna hit. You know what I'm saying? Where because I want to get back to the basics. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes that's what happens. I get caught up with all different things, and then we talking up here, right? When the people is down here, you got to talk in here, right here. See, people talk about Allah said, look, we here to get in the people's head, not go over the people's head. See, the 10%. See, when you go over the people's head, now you putting the sword above their head. You see what I mean? Because you controlling them now. When people got to qualify and disqualify themselves. So, we're going to go ahead and sign off. You know what I'm saying? Do the each one, teach one. Hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. We're going to be on tomorrow because, we were supposed to go yesterday, but that was a whole other story too. But in the meantime, in between time, I'm going to sign off and say peace.